Now, sometimes the United States Army is not for everyone, so in this video I'm going to be talking about 5 reasons why maybe the United States Army is not for you. What's up, my friends? Welcome to an all-new video. In this one, we're going to be talking specifically about maybe some reasons why joining the Army isn't a good idea for maybe you. It depends on your situations. Maybe some of these apply to you, maybe some of them don't. Now, for the most part, a lot of this is talking about active duty Army, and even in some situations, this could even apply to the military in general, but because I was United States Army, I've probably given some examples that are maybe Army related, but some of these can translate to other branches, just being the military in general as to why maybe you should not join the military. But let's get this going, and let's start off with the very first reason as to why maybe joining the military or joining the Army isn't right for you. And that first one is maybe you want the flexibility of your career to be allowed to leave it if it's not something that's just right for you. Maybe it doesn't line up with your morals, doesn't line up with your goals or whatever, and you want to be able to have the option to leave that behind and move on to other things. Because in the Army, if you sign a contract, let's say for 4 years, well, you're stuck for those 4 years. You have to just kind of deal with it. If it doesn't line up with what you want to do, well, you got to tough it out for the remainder of your contract and then try to move on to other things. Maybe that's not something you like the idea of. Maybe you don't like being committed to something. Maybe you don't want to be locked into a contract. You want to have the option that, hey, if this doesn't work out for me, I want to move on to something else and, just try something bigger and better or something that more lines up to what I'm interested in. That can be a big one for a lot of people. They just don't like being locked into those contracts. Sometimes you can get shorter contracts. Those are a little bit more difficult to get, especially a difficult situation if you end up with like a 6-year contract because maybe your MOS requires it. Maybe it's something like cybersecurity where you have to do like a 6-year contract, and in a year or 2 years or whatever, all of a sudden you decide that, oh man, maybe this was a mistake and maybe I don't like this. Well, you're just kind of stuck and you have to kind of deal with it for the remainder of the contract. Moving into the next one, maybe you're one of those kind of people that have a hard time, keeping your weight down or staying in good shape. When you're in the United States Army, every 6 months, you're gonna be tested physically. Now they have the ACFT as of October 1st, they'll make that a permanent thing, but right now units are kind of working their way up to it, but even still, you have the physical fitness test. So regardless, there's some kind of physical fitness test that it's involved, that you have to do at least every 6 months, as well as just the daily physical fitness that you're gonna do in the morning with your unit. Now, in addition to that, you have to maintain weight. Height and weight standards are required in the United States Army and the military in general, but you're gonna have to meet these standards. If you don't, then you risk being flagged or being barred or being possibly even kicked out of the military. So if you're someone that always struggles to maintain weight, to keep that weight down to a manageable weight that would be, meet the Army standards or the military standards, then that might be difficult for you to be in the United States Army or be in the United States military in general. But that also goes for being able to run. If you're just someone that I can't run, maybe you have asthma, maybe you just are not a runner in general, then that can be a difficult thing, as well as just being able to do physical activities. Monday through Friday in the United States Army, you're gonna be doing PT. Now, if you're on, reserves or, National Guard, well, then of course it's a little bit less. Most of the stuff is kind of talking about on the active duty side. So sometimes you get a little bit of flex in here for like reserve and National Guard, but there's still the requirements of staying physically fit and maintain weight standards, even if you're in the reserves or the National Guard. The next reason why maybe the military or the Army is not for you is maybe you have a problem with discipline. Now, I'm not saying that maybe you're a horrible person or whatever, but maybe you just don't like the idea of having to, call somebody a sergeant, call someone sir or ma'am or whatever. Now, especially like if you're a enlisted soldier, right? Let's say you're a private, you're a specialist, whatever the case is, and you're talking to a non-commissioned officer. Well, when you're doing so, you're supposed to be talking at the position of parade rest. So if that sounds dumb to you, sounds uncomfortable to you, sounds like something you're not gonna wanna do, that might be kind of tough for you to kind of maybe swallow. That is the proper way to show respect to a non-commissioned officer when you're talking to them. It does maybe get a little bit relaxed on the Reserve or National Guard side, but it's, pretty strict thing for most part on active duty side, unless you have some kind of really lenient unit. But that also goes along with like standing at attention for officers, saying sir, saying ma'am, all those kind of things. Maybe that's something that maybe just doesn't line up with you. There's gonna be times where maybe, let's say you're a 25-year-old individual and you have some lieutenant that's only like 23, 22 or whatever. You have to take orders from those individuals, and maybe you don't like the idea of taking orders from someone who's younger than you. So there's a lot of different scenarios with discipline. As being in the military, you're supposed to be very well disciplined. Now, before we move on, if you enjoyed this type of content and you're not yet subscribed to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button to join the Chaos Army. Maybe even think about clicking on that bell to get alerts as soon as new videos go live, including the live streams, and become a part of that notification platoon. Moving into the next one, this one seems a little bit ridiculous, but I've seen this in some cases, and that is style. And what I'm talking about here is, like, let's say for male individuals, maybe you like having long hair, maybe you like having facial hair, maybe, you know, certain ways that you like to have your hair, maybe in a certain style or certain fashion. And then for the females, maybe you always like to wear earrings, maybe you like to wear nose rings, maybe you like to have colored hair or really crazy, you know, nails. Again, on the Reserve and National Guard side, you know, you may have some leniency in there, as between drill weekends, you might be able to let things kind of relax, but then when it comes time for drill, then you have to go back to the Army standards. But for those people going to active duty, well, it's pretty strict all the time. So you're not gonna be able to have any kind of crazy nails for females, or wearing nose rings, or wearing earrings at all, unless some cases when the dress uniform, there's a little bit of relaxation with earrings as far as, you know, females go. And then as far as your hair, even some restrictions for like females, if you want to like dye your hair or anything, it has to be a natural hair color. For men, if you want to have some kind of style to it, you want to have a mohawk, you want to have long hair, you want to have facial hair, you obviously can't really have that on active duty. There are some situations where you can have a little bit of facial hair for like shaving profiles, but that usually requires some kind of permission from a doctor, and that still has to be pretty short. But there are a lot of other physical appearance things that some people, you know, want to keep that style, and they don't like having to sacrifice that to be in the United States military. Sounds really silly, but I've actually seen some people where they're like, I couldn't join the Army because I like having long hair, or I couldn't join the Army because of this or that, that's style related. Now let's move into one final one that I'll give you for a reason why it might not be wise for you to join the Army, or may not be a good idea for you to join the military, and this one really only applies for active duty. And this one is if you're a single parent. Now, these restrictions don't necessarily apply to Reserve or National Guard, as they have ways to work around it. But for active duty individuals, if you are a single parent, that usually means you're gonna have to give up custody of your child to another parent. This mainly applies for people joining the military as a single parent. It doesn't really apply to people who are currently in the military and they become a single parent. That's a little bit different, but someone who's trying to join the Army as a single parent has a lot of restrictions along with that. Now, it is not impossible. Sometimes there's ways to work around it, but for the most part, usually recruiters tell individuals that, you know, they can't have this because you're not going to really have a way to care for that child if you have to go to the field, or you have to go on a deployment or anything like that. Plus, also, a lot of times you have restrictions because maybe another parent has custody, you know, partial custody of that child as well, and you leaving that area with that child isn't going to be able to work out. So in most cases, for someone who is a single parent that wants to join the military, that means they have to give up their custody rights to that child to the other parent or to some other relative, so that way that person is the primary caregiver for that child. And for a lot of people, that's not something they want to do. So that usually can be a very big deal breaker for a lot of people, especially on active duty. Like I said, on National Guard and Reserve sides, there is ways to work around that, and you're able to actually join as a single parent. There's a lot of people that do that, but on the active duty side, it comes with a lot of restrictions, and it's a very difficult thing to make happen. All right, so there you go. Those are just a handful of reasons why you might not or should not maybe join the United States Army, or maybe the military in general. Now, next week in the next video, I'll be talking about maybe 5 reasons why you should join the Army, or maybe the military in general. So don't think I'm being biased and trying to be all negative against the military or the Army. Now, if you enjoyed this video and found it somewhat helpful, make sure to hit that thumbs up for me. Check out some links down in the description for social media, for my website, for affiliate links, all sorts of other awesome stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm ThatChrisChaos, and I'll see you next time. See ya.